So how's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new news roundup video where we talk this week in news, both old and new stories alike. Today we are starting off with future Boba here. Haven't done one of these in a minute or two, but we need to talk about the Batman 2 before getting into a whole variety of news in this video, because according to Jeff Snyder, he's put out a report scooping who the new cinematographer is for the Batman Part 2. Now, I want to say, like, take it with a grain of salt, of course, but to be fair, I'd be pretty surprised if you were, like, so bold to put this out if you didn't know your source was kind of airtight. So it looks like Mr. Snyder may have obtained quite a big W here with just who, you know, the cinematographer is, because this, if you didn't know already, has been on fans' minds for quite a long time, ever since we learned that it was incredibly kind of near impossible for Greg Fraser to return as the cinematographer for the Batman, given that he's swamped filming back-to-back Beatles movies. And so, Erik Messerschmidt will reportedly serve as cinematographer for the Batman Part 2, and personally, this wasn't really on my radar, or anyone's for that matter, I don't think, for who could be chosen, but I think it's actually such a great choice. And if I do say so, like, I think a very Matt Reeves choice to go with. So Erik Messerschmidt, if you didn't know already, won an Oscar for Best Cinematography for the movie Mank. Now, I haven't actually seen Mank. Let me know what you think of that movie, or just also how it's shot down in the comments below. But I have seen his various pieces of work where he shot episodes for Legion, Mindhunter for a couple of episodes, and Raised by Wolves on HBO. But at the same time, I'm not going to pretend to remember exactly what episodes he handled for Mindhunter and Raised by Wolves and whatnot. So other than just knowing he's an Oscar winner for cinematography, there is something else that just absolutely stands out in my mind, but probably maybe your mind as well. And that's because you may very well be familiar with David Fincher's The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender, which is just beautifully shot by Erik Messerschmidt. And this is what I mean by also when I said like a totally Matt Reeves choice, because of the vibe of that movie. Now, I think a lot of you have seen The Killer, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't seen it yourself, I'm sure, like, you can go on YouTube and search some scenes, or maybe I'm showing some shots from the trailer right now, and you should be able to kind of instantly realize how this piece of the puzzle fits in perfectly with Matt Reeves' vision for Batman and Gotham, like in his Batverse. Like, Erik will fit in so well. But I think everyone will agree that this man is way more than capable of holding his own in the Batverse to deliver us some beautiful visuals. I know Greg Fraser is a very hard DP to kind of top. You know, how do you get better than what we kind of saw in the Batman Part 1, which is, I guess, what led to a lot of apprehension for, you know, a new announcement to be made for the Batman 2 cinematographer. But I think that this man, Erik Messerschmidt, can absolutely hold the torch. I'm not trying to sound glazy for glazing's sake, but honestly, look up his work. There's already a couple of YouTube videos that I've seen where people are compiling stuff of his work. But if you want some Boba homework and you haven't done so already, watch The Killer this weekend or whenever you're free. And then, you know, imagine, just for example's sake, a hush plot for the Batman Part 2, or insert your Rogues Gallery character here for Matt Reeves' epic crime saga, and tell me that this man wouldn't be a good cinematographer for the Batman Part 2, because you wouldn't be able to. This man is a very worthy choice. And it's just funny because, again, I out of all of everyone saying, oh, Roger Deakins or whoever else, I never, you know, it would have been great to get Roger Deakins as well, but it just never felt like, wait, is it really going to be Roger Deakins kind of thing? But for it to now just all of a sudden be Erik Messerschmidt, it's kind of like, kind of out of left field, but I see what you're doing there. So, you know, I assume that we're going to hear official news about this maybe there's going to be a post by Matt Reeves over on social media, the rare occurrence where Matt Reeves pops up, just because this news is going to be getting around. Now, by the like when I'm filming this right now, that hasn't happened, so we'll see what else happens, maybe with this being officially acknowledged. You know, again, guys, we are going to be hearing more and more news for the Batman Part 2, but for now, let me know your thoughts on Erik Messerschmidt. Probably, I don't want to butcher that, but I think I'm saying it right, as the new cinematographer for the Batman Part 2. And let me know your thoughts on his work. And if you haven't seen it, let me know that. And let me know if you're going to watch The Killer as soon as you can. So really, if it isn't obvious already, CCXP this week, we've been talking about the trailer, we've been talking about quite a few things, and we're going to dive into that more and more as we get throughout these first couple of stories. But, you know, the press is kind of really starting to, you know, really begin when you're having articles like Inside Millie Alcock's meteoric rise from the inner west to Westeros. And I do recommend checking this out and reading it for yourself, as it gets into a good chat with Millie Alcock about her journey so far from House of the Dragon to now Supergirl, and just her life in general. But we got a few details coming out of this, which first of all was the estimated budget for Supergirl. And, you know, initially in my notes here, this was before James Gunn replied, and I was like, emphasis on estimated budget, because, you know, even strictly speaking, nobody knows the concrete details even behind that of Superman. But Forbes here initially put out that her name now sits beside the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow logo, a $200 million DC feature directed by fellow Australian Craig Gillespie, which is when you had everyone online just kind of be like, oh, Supergirl's got $200 million budget. Oh, what does this mean? Oh my God, because you know how it is, especially with the discourse surrounding Superman, everyone and their grandmama becomes a box office expert and starts, you know, comparing it to this, that, and the other, and the kind of flame war begins. But then we had an update with a user asking James Gunn over on Threads if this is true, and he said not even a little bit true. Now, funnily enough, initially when I was making notes for this video, I was going to say that this wouldn't have been like an outrageous budget just because of, you know, how big this movie is in scope. And if you've read the comic book, you'll know what I mean with how much VFX they can pile into it because of the adventure that Supergirl and Ruthie go on in outer space. There's some crazy panels there, and I know I always say adaptations don't copy and paste, but, you know, it just wouldn't have been crazy outlandish. But I think the conversation, if it was indeed at 200 million, would still be about, okay, but how well is Supergirl gonna do? We just don't really know right now. But for James Gunn to come out and say not even a little bit true, I doubt he would boldly reply publicly if it wasn't true, to just mean, oh, it's not true because it's even more than that kind of thing, right? Like more than 200 million. So as a result of that, you know, it's going to be under $200 million. And I think that's pretty cool to hear, that it's most likely somewhere below 200 million, perhaps, you know, maybe $160 to $180 million budget. And that is just me spitballing, by the way. And I still put it roughly that high, just because, again, how ambitious I imagine this movie's going to be with adapting what goes down in the comic book. You know, you also have Jason Momoa's Lobo in there. Sure, you know, there's other things to take into account when it comes to other aspects that you can kind of knock money off of a film's production budget, but I'm just trying to point out that I like hearing that it is basically under 200 million somewhere, because, you know, I am a bit more nervous about Supergirl in terms of how well it's gonna do. So ultimately, if you have, let's just say, a budget of 170 million versus 200 million, well, you know, it's kind of like, okay, well, it needs to achieve X amount in the box office, perhaps in the $500 million plus range, to kind of start turning a profit and whatnot. But we don't know how much marketing they're going to put into this. Will they put a lot into it? Because technically, Supergirl's name isn't as popular as Superman, and Superman still made $615 million. Well, Supergirl, as a result of not being as technically popular as Superman, needs to now put an even bigger effort into the marketing budget, or are they going to try and do it in a different way? Fantastic Four, that's something to bring up here. It was in the $500 million total box office run range. So do you see what I mean? That's why I think people were a bit nervous about Supergirl. Like, even if it's reviewed really well by critics and audiences, you still need to get, like, you know, your boy Jeffrey, the general movie-going audience guy, to go and want to see the movie, and that is where it really lies in the marketing. So let's just hope that the marketing makes this movie look so freaking good and that it appeals to hopefully a lot of people. I have faith in it. I have a lot of faith in Millie Alcock. I think she will knock it out the park. You know, everyone is expecting the trailer in just a few days' time because I believe CCXP kicks off on the 4th and goes all the way to Sunday the 7th. And, you know, there's going to be all kinds of things coming out of CCXP. And we've got the interactive booth. We know that from DC Film News here, saying Supergirl is getting an intergalactic bar booth at CCXP featuring a crypto challenge, an otherworldly popcorn machine, a Kryptonian speed/strength challenge, and a prize claw machine. Which is cool, right? But like, there's nothing really confirmed about the trailer right now in terms of CCXP. And, you know, you look at the schedule, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. You've got all of this stuff. You got Prime Video there, you got Fallout, you got things like that which we're expecting to get information on. Now there is a couple of locked posts and we don't know exactly what they are. One could argue that maybe it's something to promote Supergirl, but I guess, you know, what I need to say is, and I'm seeing other people suggest this as well, what if the Supergirl trailer releases after CCXP sometime online? And what we get at CCXP is simply the interactive intergalactic bar thing that they're doing. That is possible, obviously. At the same time, we didn't have the Superman trailer at CCXP last year, and they decided to upload it on December 17th. Now, Supergirl sure has a presence at CCXP, physically there with that intergalactic bar, but they still might wait a couple of days or so until they do release the trailer online. And then you have to take things into account, like, for Superman, they did a whole thing, like posters, motion posters, teases and stuff like that of the Fortress of Solitude door. Then there was a countdown. You know, you would have to think with how they want Supergirl to do really well. Like, would they not do something like that bare minimum to try and drive engagement and excitement for the trailer even releasing? You would have thought they would give the same treatment there, but again, you know, I'm just rambling at this point. They might not, and they could just release it at CCXP and then upload it online, turn it from unlisted to public, and then boom, we get the trailer. But I guess I'm saying for now, don't put all of your faith into it literally being uploaded on the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. Like, what if they do just wait a couple of more days? Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we will be doing that Supergirl trailer breakdown and rambling quite a lot about that. So up next, guys, we've got a couple of Lanterns tidbits just to add on to the previous Lanterns upfront teaser that was revealed, description that we broke down. We have here from Matthias Latora, who actually saw the teaser for themselves and actually gave us some descriptions. Something else here. And it's very interesting, saying not quite, but close. A fairly ambiguous tease there, but it seems to be maybe an additional detail of how in the trailer a power battery was actually seen, and it kind of looks like this. Now, like, it is him saying not quite, but close with regards to it. It's not going to literally look like that kind of long, thin power battery, but it's just something I wanted to bring up because I saw some people asking me about this, saying, hey, Boba, did you see that? There was apparently the power battery seen in the trailer as well. That's cool. Obviously, the power battery is used to charge the Green Lantern power rings, and I guess in one of the trailers, we got to see that. And I say one of the trailers because that's another thing that Matthias also mentioned here with regards to this page, saying apparently 2 different versions of the Lanterns trailer was shown yesterday in 2 cities, and that's where Matthias says that's it. There were 2 versions. What was projected in Buenos Aires, where I was, showed a suit, and the Sao Paulo projection, it was not shown. So I don't know. I'm still praying that we can get that HBO upfront version of the Lanterns teaser released to us sometime in December, That is wishful thinking, but we now know that a power battery is not like crazy mind-blowing stuff, but, you know, I am looking forward to see the designs of this stuff, and obviously how one of these that was shown in a different location did show a suit. And shout out to Felipe here for his amazing artwork. This could be what we actually see Cole Chandler's Hal Jordan looking like in the Green Lantern Earth 1-esque suit that the show might be doing. This isn't confirmed, but apparently in the show, the Green Lantern suit does look similar to that of the Earth 1 comic. Now, I know not everyone loves that. Personally, for me, I like the design, and I can imagine that working in the Lantern show. But at the same time, you really can't please everyone. So I'd love to know what you think of if this is the Green Lantern suit we're going to get. What do you think of this kind of mock-up, this concept of what it could kind of look like with Kyle Chandler here? I've also had a lot of people ask me about those bloody AI pictures going out with lanterns, and, you know, there's even one of Supergirl, and this is all getting to the point of where people have said to me, hey, Boba, have you seen the lanterns stills that they've released, or the Supergirl one of her in the bar? And I'm like, my God, like, this is getting nuts now. Like, these are fake. This is AI. You know, this is only going to get worse and worse with more fake photos like this coming out online. So when you see stuff like that, maybe give it a little bit of a closer look, because it might not be an actual image of, you know, Supergirl or Hal Jordan and John Stewart. Usually there are telling signs, but AI, new models and whatnot, iterations and versions are getting released, and yeah, you're starting to get stuff like this. So don't be fooled, people. Now, another thing I just wanted to quickly address here is that I've had quite a few people ask me my thoughts on a report about how Steve Trevor is apparently meant to be in Man of Tomorrow. But this is one of those things, guys, where, like, it's just an opinion, but it's gained traction to the point of where you have, you know, some fan news page outlets online saying Steve Trevor is one of the characters that James Gunn is casting for Man of Tomorrow. No. Like, like, this is what I can't stand about some news pages who say, well, reportedly, like, this is, and it's just like they don't add in how this is an opinion from said, you know, it's just, hey, we're doing this to kind of farm some engagement, or we just genuinely didn't do our research and basically, you know, we're just saying something that is going to mislead a lot of people, because you do have, you know, your Tom, Dick, and Harry out there who will read that and be like, ooh, I think, you know, I've heard that Steve Trevor is in it, and this could lead up to that casting description of maybe how Wonder Woman could be in it. Also, speaking of rumors that are kind of being presented as fact, oh man, this is like the Boba debunking part of the video. We've had another thing going around recently where people are saying that according to Forbes, no matter who buys Warner Brothers Discovery, the DCU will remain. So I don't know why this has gained traction, because it's that report from November 8th talking about you know, Superman, its box office, its success, or, you know, the question of lack of success, all of that stuff. November 8th, the one that, you know, you may remember, the Forbes one that everyone was talking about, in addition to the one before that. For some reason, that, I think, because it got updated on November 26th. But again, it's just the opinion of that guy who wrote the article. Now, you guys know me. I would love to say that, yeah, this is absolutely a done deal. But what I don't like seeing is when there's simply an article, the dude who writes the article says, I think the DCU plans will remain as is. And then it's reported as, according to Forbes, the DCU will remain, kind of thing. You know, it's just a bit like... Now, if you watch me here on the channel, you'll know my thoughts are such that I think the DCU will be good for the next couple of years, pending like an evaluation of how certain projects like Supergirl, Clayface, Man of Tomorrow, even under the Elseworlds label like the Batman 2, how all of that is going. Obviously, you know, we can't predict the future. There are certain things that could change, even when it comes to Gunn and Safran's contract. I have entire videos dedicated to this. But nothing is, like, reportedly being put out there by any major trades other than an opinion at this point. Now, speaking of the Warner Brothers sale, I mean, this is at the risk of another update today, but we have more chatter here with, as discussing film, sourcing Bloomberg, say Netflix's new bid to buy Warner Brothers is a mostly cash offer. The company is arranging a mega loan to be able to buy Warner Brothers. And as we know, like, man, this is just becoming more and more of a thing. You got Paramount bidding and bidding and bidding, but now everyone's at the table and it's like Comcast, Netflix, Paramount, and now we're hearing that Netflix is going like as ham as they can to try and get, I mean, obviously each bidder will be, because we have Comcast and Netflix not wanting to acquire the whole company. It's mainly for its studio and streaming adjacent aspects. But at the end of the day, I mean, as Deadline says here, it still has many pieces yet to fall into place. And a lengthy period of regulatory review will follow. And, you know, I've been asked about this as well with regards to that video I did about the restoration of the Snyderverse conversation that's happening at the same time as all of this. You know, maybe if just the studio and streamer part was purchased, it can go through quicker. But the thing is, I feel like with the whole Netflix thing there and Comcast, even though that's just what they're after, and it's not the whole company, which would take longer, with the amount of like conversation and scrutiny surrounding this, I do still think, even if it's not for the whole company, things will still take quite a while to go through. Obviously, that's impossible for me to know exactly how long, but the idea of Netflix acquiring, you know, DC Studios and like Warner Brothers streaming aspects of things, that's just not going to be something that will go down super smoothly. I don't know what more to add with this, guys, other than it's just it's the waiting game. It really is. Like, it's going to be purchased. I'm still thinking that Paramount want it so bad that they will end up buying the whole thing. But now you're having stories like Netflix's new bid is like arranging a mega loan for an all-cash offer to buy the streaming, and maybe WB looks at that and they're like, well, damn, we can't really pass up how much they're offering here, and they just do sell things off separately. But that is a bit more of a complicated thing as opposed to Paramount offering to just buy all of it. So that's why I still keep saying it might very well be Paramount, but there is no good choice out of all of these choices. It's the easy thing to say, but it's just the truth. But no matter what, somebody's going to come out on top. I mean, other little tidbits with DC, a lot of people have been talking about Gunn's response with regards to DCU Batman. We have Real Anarchy here, shout out to him, asking Gunn, saying, hello, James Gunn. I'm sure the most requested thing for Batman are the white eyes, but has anyone ever asked for the cowl to be animated like Deadpool's? Something where he could frown when dealing with villains, but have a more welcoming look when he's talking to peers or civilians. And Gunn said something that I think is just ultimately the most important thing when approaching DCU Batman, because this will be the kind of DCU Batman that will be the face of Batman in the mainline cinematic universe side of comic book movies for years and years to come, hypothetically, if we're lucky enough to carry on for that long, right? Gunn says the most requested thing would be the blue and gray, then the yellow around the bat, and then the white eyes. But all of those things I find less important than the character himself, the writing, and the person who plays him. And then we had another response saying, maybe so, but the people are making it clear what they want to see. And Gunn says, individuals are making clear what they want to see, but even the most requested thing, the blue and gray, is split evenly with people who don't want that. And the other two requested things are also things just as many people say they don't want to see. So you have to do what's right by the specific film and story. So I fully agree. Like, you know, even with the latter part there, just because you're seeing people say blue and gray, blue and gray, blue and gray, you will have almost, if not an equal amount of people saying, you know what, I don't know if that would work though. And even if it would, I don't want that. I want this version or that version. You cannot please everyone. So you just have to go with prioritizing Batman in this iteration. How can you truly try and bring a Batman to fruition in the best way you can that is true to the character, true to the kind of vision of the character you're going for. And this is more of a fantastical universe. We know it's kind of Grant Morrison, Batman-y-esque inspired. And so what would that look like? And then you kind of think, okay, how would the suit work? So in the DCU, Gunn, granted it was up until the very last moment, decided that Trunks would be on the Superman suit for David Corenswet's Superman. But, you know, he made that decision based on this kind of flavor of universe we've got. Superman and Trunks works here. How will, you know, Batman's armor be depicted? Does that work for this version of the character? Can they find a way in the costuming to subtly maybe put blue and gray in? Or do you actually want blue and gray to be so obviously depicted it's just as blue and gray as it is if it was colored in on an animated episode? But would that really reflect as well in live action? Maybe it would. But again, these are like the finer details that you kind of figure out a little bit later. I personally, yeah, don't get me wrong, we shouldn't brush aside how much we want to see the design of the character brought to fruition to this preference or that preference, or how it could look awesome if it was done this way. Why not do it this way? If we're finally getting the opportunity to have a DCU, like a cinematic universe Batman, with the intention of having this character just pop up again and again and again and again, you want it to be everything it can be. But no matter what, at the heart of it, you need to nail the character, which, again, not everyone would agree with how the character's depicted. So you kind of just keep going round and round in circles. And when the time comes, I'm sure the suit will be actually also one of many suits. That's kind of what I would like to see. The Batcave being bat-tastically, amazingly huge with all kinds of things, but maybe a lot of kind of suit capsules with different designs. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you kind of vibe that, yeah, we need to nail the character first before fussing over the costuming? But I also don't envy whoever actually has to really design this costume, but also sign off on it, being like, yep, this is what we're putting out there to all the people who are going to be judging us for how this costume goes down. So up next in other movie and TV news, we have here from The Hollywood Reporter, a new live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot will release on November 17th, 2028 in theaters. Now, I've already spoken about this kind of in live stream. Well, we spoke about the change of direction with how they've put aside the last Ronin movie, which I don't really want to talk about that because we're just going to ignore that. But they're kind of refocusing their efforts with revitalizing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in other ways. And The Last Ronin isn't like completely out the question, but they're not wanting to go straight into that full send. They want to bring about a different tone of the Ninja Turtles until they're in a place where they can maybe execute a more adult, you know, blood-slashing kind of oriented story as they described it. Now, The Hollywood Reporter say here that last month they reported a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles feature franchise reboot was in the works as the Skydance-owned studio was aiming to revitalize some of its popular IP. The poor performance of the 2016's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows previously put the brakes on development for the live-action versions of the property that began as a comic book in the 1980s before spawning a popular animated series and toy line. So we have for now an idea of when they want to get a movie out by. I've got my fingers crossed that it will be something that is better than the 2014 and 2016 movies. I think, again, this is why people were a bit salty when it came to the news of how The Last Ronin was being put aside, because that's like, if we're wanting an entry point into something like, okay, you know, let's do something pretty damn successful with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Granted, we would need to wait to see the movie and everything like that. But if you want a concept and you want to bring in a writer and a director where like this movie could be something that is, you know, starting off with that would have been so good. There is a part of me that understands why maybe you want to put out one that's a bit more catering to all audiences live action rather than just starting off with a very kind of adult toned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. So for now, we're going to have to just stand by, but I think we all just are really hoping for some kind of win here. Now, as for God of War, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you noticed, big fan of the God of War games. My God. Now, to be fair, I will say my entry point was with Kratos and Atreus with the Norse mythology. So, you know, I will just put that on the table. But regardless, huge fan of those games. And, you know, when it comes to adaptations, there's always a bit of apprehension when it comes to just video games. Going into something like an episodic series, can it be done justice? Now, news of this is coming out from Variety, where they say God of War Amazon TV series sets Frederick Toy to direct the first 2 episodes, and a 2-season order has already been given, which is kind of nuts. They must be very, very confident here. Now, as they say, Toy is a highly accomplished TV director, winning the Emmy for Outstanding Directing for a Drama Series for FX's Shogun in 2024. Absolutely fantastic series if you haven't seen it already. He has also worked on hit shows like Westworld, love Westworld, The Walking Dead, like so on and so forth. So it's good to know that he's directing the first 2 episodes of the show. I do expect like a high caliber of quality with this. I don't think they're going to go into it wanting to mess it up. You know, look at what Amazon have done with Fallout. They've turned that video game franchise into a live action adaptation that just clicks so well. Now, they're also casting for Kratos and Atreus right now. I actually don't have any idea right from the top of my head who should fill those roles in live action. Let me know any fan casts that you have down in the description so I can, you know, look at what you guys are saying and be like, you know what? Maybe I can imagine said person. But this does have a whole bunch of potential. I mean, say what you will about The Last of Us and where that went, but like, you know, with season 1, a lot of people really liked that. So you can imagine the Kratos and Atreus journey there. It's going to be hard to do and hard to do justice to, but I have faith. I do have faith that this could be something really special, and I'd like to think anybody tackling this wouldn't take this lightly. And already with regards to who they've set to direct the first 2 episodes, Frederick Toy here, that gives me confidence. I think the next stage of confidence is who they cast. So again, let me know what you think of this, but who you think should be Kratos and Atreus down in the comments below. To end this video off, we had a story come out quite a few days ago now from Nexus Point News, and that is that Monarch Legacy of Monsters prequel series has been greenlit at Apple with Wyatt Russel returning. So, in case you didn't know already, I am quite a fan of Monarch. I really enjoyed season 1, way more than I ever thought I would. So, when I first saw this headline, I was like, wait, you know, do I like, I think I like this, because the thing is, I really like Wyatt Russel, and I love what they did with Wyatt Russel and Kurt Russell. I do think that the flashbacks were some of the strongest stuff of the show, which is interesting because when it comes to the Monsterverse, you know, there's always a bit of discourse about, do we care about the human stuff so much as, you know, we just want to get into the Titan-related stuff. Please, more of that, more of that, more of that. But it's fascinating. A lot of people feel the same way in how they nailed a lot of those flashback scenes. Now, as Nexus Point News go and say here, the series will be set during the Cold War and grapple with tensions between the United States and Russia in a world of monsters. So this is what I was thinking, like, okay, but didn't we play out the younger Lee Shaw scenes in season 1? But maybe, just maybe, we didn't. Such as maybe his time in 1962, where under Operation Hourglass, there was that mission into the Hollow Earth. Maybe we could see some more scenes there for when he popped back out into present day. It was 20 years later. But obviously the Cold War doesn't end in 1982, so you could see what happens after that. So I think we could get some more flashbacks to his time inside the Hollow Earth before popping up again in the 80s, but there's still like 1982 to 1991, which was the end of the Cold War, all of that time to fill with whatever the heck happened with Lee Shaw, and maybe now some more of the geopolitical aspects to Titans, the United States, Russia, what they could be doing there, and I have hope for this. In terms of actual monster, like Titan level stuff, that's something I'm very intrigued about. I would love to know what you think of a prequel to Monarch. Like, again, my knee-jerk reaction was like, really? But then I was like, you know what? There is an ore vein to be mined here, I believe. And let's hope that it turns out to be something good. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my long very long, rambly news roundup video. So let me know your thoughts on absolutely everything we covered in today's video down in the comments below. If you're still watching right now, I'd greatly appreciate, again, if you're watching right now and you're hearing me, greatly appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more news breakdowns like this. But I'm gonna love you and leave you, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.